Welcome to this video. Chapter 6, The Guardian's Secret. Alice and Walter continued their journey, still reeling from the encounter with the Guardians. They walked in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Walter spoke up. "What do you think the Guardians meant when they said we were the key to stopping the darkness?" Alice shook her head. "I don't know. But I have a feeling we're going to find out soon enough." As they walked, Alice noticed that the landscape was starting to change. The trees were growing thinner, and the ground was becoming more barren. In the distance, they could see a large structure looming over the horizon. "That must be the Dark Tower," Walter said grimly. Alice nodded, steeling herself for the battle ahead. As they approached the tower, they saw that it was heavily guarded by the minions of the darkness. "We'll have to find a way to get past them," Alice said, eyeing the guards warily. Walter grinned. "Leave that to me." With that, he charged towards the guards, his sword flashing in the sunlight. Alice watched as he engaged in battle, his movements graceful and fluid. She summoned her magic, joining the fight with a burst of flames that sent the minions scurrying. Together, they fought their way through the minions, finally reaching the entrance to the tower. As they stepped inside, they were greeted by a long, winding staircase that seemed to go on forever. Alice and Walter exchanged a glance before starting up the stairs, their footsteps echoing through the empty tower. As they climbed, Alice noticed that the air was growing colder, and she could feel a chill creeping down her spine. Finally, they reached the top of the stairs, stepping out into a large room. In the center of the room stood a figure shrouded in darkness, his face obscured by a hood. "So, you have come," the figure said, his voice cold and menacing. Alice and Walter tensed, ready for whatever the figure had in store for them. "Who are you?" Alice demanded, her voice steady. The figure chuckled. "I am the darkness that has been consuming this world. And you, Alice and Walter, are the only ones who stand in my way." With that, the figure stepped forward, revealing his face. Alice gasped as she recognized him. "Father," she whispered in disbelief. The figure laughed again. "Yes, my dear Alice. It is I." Alice stared at her father, unsure of what to do. But before she could even think, he attacked, his movements swift and deadly. Alice and Walter fought back with all their might, but they soon realized that they were no match for the darkness that had consumed Alice's father. Suddenly, there was a blinding flash of light, and the Guardians appeared out of nowhere, surrounding Alice and Walter. "Use the power within you," the Guardian said, her voice urgent. Alice closed her eyes, summoning all the magic she had within her. A bright light enveloped her, and she could feel the darkness within her father being pushed back. With a final burst of energy, Alice unleashed a beam of light that struck her father, dispelling the darkness once and for all. As the light faded, Alice collapsed to the ground, exhausted but victorious. The Guardians surrounded her, their faces solemn. "You have done well," the Guardian said, her voice full of pride. Alice smiled weakly, knowing that the battle was far from over. But for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful. Together with Walter and the Guardians, Alice would face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that they were Alice and Walter made their way back to the city, their hearts heavy with the weight of what they had just discovered. As they walked, they discussed what they had seen and tried to come up with a plan to stop the darkness from consuming the world. "We need to find a way to close the portal," Alice said, her voice determined. "If we can do that, we can stop the darkness from spreading any further." Walter nodded in agreement. "But we'll need help," he said. "We can't do this alone." As they entered the city, they noticed that something was different. The streets were emptier than usual, and there was an eerie silence that hung in the air. Alice and Walter exchanged a glance, both feeling a sense of unease. "What's going on?" Alice whispered. Walter shrugged. "I don't know, but we need to be careful." As they walked through the deserted streets, they suddenly heard a sound in the distance. It was a low, rumbling noise that grew louder with each passing moment. Alice and Walter exchanged a worried look before breaking into a run, following the sound to its source. They soon found themselves at the edge of the city, overlooking a massive army of darkness that stretched as far as the eye could see. The army was led by a figure that towered over the others, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. Alice and Walter knew that they were outmatched, but they refused to give up. They stood their ground, ready to fight for their world. The battle was fierce and intense. Alice and Walter fought with all their might, their swords flashing in the sunlight as they sliced through the darkness. They were joined by others who had heeded the call to defend their world, and together they managed to hold their ground. But as the battle raged on, Alice and Walter began to feel their strength waning. They knew that they couldn't hold out much longer. And just as they were about to give up, a miracle happened. The sky above them suddenly began to brighten, and a beam of light shot down from the heavens, striking the figure leading the army of darkness. The figure let out a piercing scream before crumbling to the ground, defeated. Alice and Walter looked up in amazement, and they saw a figure descending from the sky. It was a woman, clothed in robes of white and gold, and she carried a staff that glowed with a radiant light. "I am the goddess of this world," the woman said, her voice echoing across the battlefield. "And I have come to aid you in your time of need." Alice and Walter fell to their knees, overcome with gratitude and awe. They knew that they had been given a second chance, and they vowed to never give up in their fight against the darkness. The goddess smiled down at them before disappearing into the sky. And as Alice and Walter looked around at the battlefield, they saw that the darkness had been defeated, and that their world had been saved. But they knew that their fight was far from over. The portal still hung open, and they knew that they needed to find a way to close it for good. They looked at each other, their eyes shining with determination, and they set off on their next adventure, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Thank you for watching.